Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a lovely day and are ready for a new story. Before we get started, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. So I came home to another woman in my bed wearing my favorite hoodie and a pair of my shorts, and my boyfriend acted like I was the one being unreasonable for having a problem with it. That's the short version, but y'all need the full version because I am still heated about this. Okay, so backing up, me and Dwayne have been together since the summer before last. We met through my cousin Loretta's husband, Brandon. They used to work at the same warehouse before Brandon switched jobs, and Dwayne came to their 4th of July cookout. I wasn't even trying to talk to anyone that day. I was literally there for the ribs and to watch Loretta's kids do sparklers in the driveway. But Dwayne kept finding reasons to come stand near me. And eventually we got to talking, and he was funny and kind of sweet in this dumb way, where he'd say something and then laugh at his own joke before I could even react. We exchanged numbers and started hanging out. Within like 2 months, we were basically together every day. He lived about 25 minutes from me, out near the edge of town, where it's all these little duplexes that look exactly the same, and I was renting a room from this older lady who had very strong opinions about visitors after 9 p.m. So most of the time I was driving out to his place, spending weekends there, leaving stuff there. By November, we were talking about getting a place together, and by January, we signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in this complex off the highway near the shopping plaza. Split rent, split utilities, both names on the lease. I moved in first because his lease ended 2 weeks after mine started, so I set everything up. Bought the couch, bought the bed, bought the kitchen stuff. He brought his TV, his gaming setup, and like 4 garbage bags of clothes. That should have been my first hint about who was actually building this home, but whatever. Things were good for a while. Not perfect because nobody's perfect, but we had a rhythm. I worked early shifts, so I was usually home by mid-afternoon. He worked later, so we'd overlap in the evenings. We cooked together sometimes, watched stuff together, had our own spaces. The second bedroom was supposed to be a shared office type thing, but it was mostly his gaming room with my desk shoved in the corner. I let it go because it wasn't worth fighting about, and honestly, I usually did my stuff at the kitchen table anyway. Now here's where Eve comes in. Eve is Dwayne's quote-unquote best friend from high school. According to him, they grew up on the same street, hung out in the same group, blah blah blah. He mentioned her pretty early on, like casually, the way you mention anyone from your past. Oh, me and Eve used to go to this place. Eve would think that's hilarious. That kind of thing. I didn't think anything of it at first because I have male friends too, and I'm not that girl who freaks out about every woman in her boyfriend's life. But Eve was a lot. She texted him constantly. Not like normal friend texting where you send memes and catch up every few days. I'm talking multiple times a day, long paragraphs, voice notes. And Dwayne always responded. Always. We could be in the middle of eating dinner and his phone would go off and he'd pick it up mid-bite to respond to her. I brought it up maybe 3 months after we moved in together because it was starting to get on my nerves. Not even in a jealous way, more like, can you be present with me for 5 minutes without responding to someone else? He told me I was overthinking it and that Eve was going through a hard time because she'd just gotten out of a bad relationship and needed support. Okay, fine. I backed off. Except Eve's hard time never seemed to end. Every few weeks there was a new crisis. Her roommate situation fell apart. She got into it with her mom. Her car broke down. Something was always happening, and Dwayne was always the first person she called. And he always dropped everything. I remember one time we had plans to go to this outdoor market thing on a Saturday morning, something I'd been looking forward to all week. And he got a call from Eve at like 8 a.m. saying she needed help moving some furniture because her roommate was being weird about shared stuff. He told me he'd be back in an hour. He was gone until almost 4 in the afternoon. Came back acting like nothing happened and got confused when I was upset. I tried to have a real conversation about it. Not yelling, not accusing, just trying to explain that I felt like Eve's needs consistently came before mine and that it was starting to affect us. He hit me with the whole she's like a sister to me thing. Told me I was being insecure. Told me Eve had no one else and he couldn't just abandon her. And then he said something that really pissed me off. He told me that if I was more confident in myself, I wouldn't feel threatened by a friendship. I let it go again, but that one sat with me. Because I am confident. I know exactly who I am. The issue was never about my confidence, it was about his priorities. Anyway, my mom had been dealing with some health stuff, and it got worse. She lives about 4 hours away in this little town where she's been since I was a kid. My dad passed when I was 19, and my older brother Richard lives about an hour from her, but he works crazy hours and can't always be around. Mom called me on a Wednesday night and she wasn't doing well. Not emergency room bad, but bad enough that she needed someone there. Richard was covering what he could, but he was stretched thin, and I could hear it in his voice when he called me the next morning, asking if I could come help out for a bit. I talked to Dwayne about it and told him I was going to go stay with my mom for probably 2 weeks, maybe a little longer depending on how things went. He was supportive about it, said of course go take care of your mom, Don't worry about anything here. We hugged, I packed a bag, and I drove out there that Friday morning. Left him the apartment, the routine, everything. The first week went fine between me and Dwayne. We texted every day, FaceTimed a couple times. He asked about my mom, told me what he had for dinner, normal couple stuff. But I noticed during the second week, things started getting shorter. His texts came later. He stopped initiating calls. When I'd FaceTime him, he'd answer, but the conversations were quick, and he always seemed distracted or like he was trying to get off the phone. I figured he was just in his own routine and didn't read too much into it because I had bigger things on my plate. My mom was my priority. I came home on a Thursday afternoon. I hadn't told Dwayne the exact time because honestly, I wasn't sure when I'd get there. I left my mom's around 10 a.m., and with traffic and a stop for gas, it could have been anywhere from 2 to 3 p.m. I pulled into the apartment complex around 2:30, grabbed my bag from the trunk, walked up the stairs to our unit. The front door was unlocked, which was a little weird because Dwayne is usually obsessive about locking it. I walked in, and the first thing I noticed was shoes by the door that weren't mine. White Nike Air Forces, women's size, sitting right next to Dwayne's work boots. My brain kind of registered it but didn't fully process it yet. Then I noticed other stuff. A jacket on the back of the kitchen chair that I'd never seen before. A different brand of shampoo on the bathroom counter that I could see through the open door from the hallway. A phone charger plugged into the wall by the couch that was definitely not mine or Dwayne's because we both have iPhones and this was a Samsung charger. I walked to the bedroom and pushed the door open, and there was a woman in our bed, asleep, in the middle of the afternoon, wearing my gray Champion hoodie that I leave on the hook behind the bedroom door and a pair of my black Nike shorts. She had the covers pulled up and was just passed out like she lived there. There was a glass of water on my nightstand and her phone was charging on Dwayne's side. I just stood in the doorway for probably 10 seconds before I said anything. Then I said, "Excuse me," loud enough that she jolted awake. She sat up and looked at me, and I looked at her, and she clearly had no idea who I was for a second. Then it clicked and she went, "Oh," and kind of froze. I asked her who the hell she was and what she was doing in my bed in my clothes. She told me her name was Eve and that Dwayne said she could stay there for a little while. She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, like I was the one intruding. She was in my apartment wearing my clothes, sleeping in my bed, and she looked at me like I was the visitor. I told her to get out of my bed right now, and she started getting up slowly like she was annoyed at being woken up. I said, "I don't care if you're annoyed. Get up and get my hoodie off." She pulled it over her head and tossed it on the bed, like it was hers to toss. She was wearing a tank top underneath. She grabbed her phone and walked past me into the living room without saying anything else. I called Dwayne. He answered on the third ring, and before he could even say hello, I told him he better explain why there's a woman sleeping in our bed wearing my clothes right now. He got all quiet for a second, and then he started with the, "She needed a place to stay" thing. Her roommate kicked her out. She had nowhere to go. It was only supposed to be for a few days. He was going to tell me but didn't want to stress me out while I was with my mom. I told him I didn't care about any of that. I asked him why she was in our bed, not the second bedroom, not the couch, our bed, and why she was wearing my clothes. He said the second bedroom was too cluttered with his gaming stuff, and the couch was uncomfortable, and he didn't think it was a big deal. As for the clothes, he said she didn't have much with her, and my stuff was just there. I told him that is absolute garbage, and he knows it. That bed is where we sleep. Those are my clothes. You don't just give another woman access to your girlfriend's personal space and things without asking. He started telling me I was blowing it out of proportion, and that Eve is just a friend, and he was just being a good friend, and I was making it weird. I was making it weird. Me. The person who came home to find another woman set up in her apartment like a replacement. I was the one making it weird. Eve was still in the living room this whole time, and I could hear her moving around. I walked out there, and she was on the couch on her phone like she was just waiting for this to blow over. I told her she needed to get her stuff and leave. She looked up at me and said Dwayne told her she could stay until she figured things out. I told her I don't care what Dwayne told her. This is my apartment too, and I'm telling her to leave. She started to argue about it, and I cut her off. I told her I'm not doing this with you. You're in my home uninvited wearing my clothes and sleeping in my bed, and you have 15 minutes to grab your things and go. She texted Dwayne right in front of me, and I could see her typing fast. Then she started gathering her stuff, which was way more than someone who'd been there a few days. She had a duffel bag in the closet. She had toiletries in the bathroom. She had stuff in the fridge. There was a blanket on the couch that wasn't mine. She had basically moved in. While she was packing, I went into the bedroom and started looking around. The sheets were different. He'd put on a set I don't even recognize. These dark green sheets that were definitely not ours. Our comforter was folded up in the closet, and there was a different blanket on the bed. My side of the closet had been pushed to one end to make room for some of her clothes hanging there. My bathroom shelf had been cleared to make room for her skincare stuff. My makeup bag had been moved from the counter to under the sink. I'm not going to pretend I was calm about it. I was furious. I was pulling things out and looking at what else had been changed, and every new thing I found made it worse. She had groceries in the kitchen. Her yogurt, her specific brand of oat milk that I could see wasn't mine because I drink regular milk, her frozen meals in the freezer. There was a second set of keys on the counter, which meant he had given her a copy of our apartment key. She left after about 20 minutes. Didn't say bye, didn't apologize, just walked out with her duffel bag and a tote bag full of stuff. But here's what got me. She clearly didn't take everything. There were still clothes in the closet that weren't mine. Still stuff in the bathroom, like she expected to come back. Dwayne came home about an hour later. He walked in and immediately started with the please. Just let me explain routine. I told him I don't want explanations. I want answers. I asked him when exactly Eve moved in. He said about 4 days after I left. 4 days. I was gone for 14 days total, and for 10 of those days, another woman was living in my apartment. I asked him where he slept while she was here. He said the couch at first, but then they switched because the couch was hurting his back. So he was sleeping in our bed. And where was she sleeping? He said also in the bed, but on my side, and they just slept. Nothing happened. He told me he slept in the same bed with another woman for over a week and expected me to believe nothing happened. I told him even if by some miracle nothing physical happened, and I wasn't buying that for a second, the fact that he moved another woman into my home, let her sleep in my bed, wear my clothes, use my things, rearranged my space to make room for her, and then tried to hide it from me was enough. That alone was a betrayal. That alone was disrespectful on a level I can't even fully describe. He kept saying it wasn't like that. She just needed help. He didn't know how to say no to her. I asked him if he even tried. I asked if at any point during those 10 days he thought about me, about how I would feel coming home to this. He said he was going to have her out before I got back and clean everything up so I'd never know. Let that register. His plan was not to stop doing it. His plan was to make sure I never found out. I told him that is the most disrespectful thing he has ever said to me, and that he just admitted the whole thing was something he knew I wouldn't be okay with, which is exactly why he hid it. He didn't even try to deny that part. He just kept saying he was sorry and that it got out of hand. I asked him about the keys. Why did she have a key to our apartment? He said she needed to come and go because she was looking for a new place and had to go to viewings and stuff during the day. I asked him if it occurred to him at any point that giving another woman a key to our shared apartment without telling me was crossing a line. He said he didn't think of it like that. That was his answer for everything. He didn't think of it like that. He didn't think it was a big deal. He didn't mean for it to go that far. He was just helping a friend. I told him that is not a friend situation. Friends crash on couches for a night or two. Friends don't replace your girlfriend's sheets with new ones and hang their clothes in her closet and put their oat milk next to your regular milk in the fridge like they're the one who lives there. That is not helping a friend. That is playing house with someone else while your girlfriend is taking care of her sick mother. He got frustrated and told me I was twisting everything and that I was going to ruin a good thing over something innocent. I told him if this is his version of innocent, then we have very different definitions and very different expectations and maybe very different futures. He left after that, told me he needed air and walked out, didn't say where he was going, didn't say when he'd be back, just grabbed his jacket and left. I sat in that apartment alone, surrounded by evidence of another woman's presence, and I stripped the bed. I stripped those ugly green sheets off and threw them in a trash bag. I took every single item she left behind and put it in bags by the front door. I went through the fridge and threw out everything that wasn't mine. I put my comforter back on the bed, and I moved my things back to where they belonged. Then Loretta called because she could tell from my earlier text that something was wrong, and I told her everything. She was livid. She said she was going to call Brandon and find out what he knew because there's no way Dwayne did all this without telling somebody. I told her to go ahead because at this point I wanted to know everything. Brandon apparently had no idea, or at least that's what he told Loretta. But he did say something interesting. He said Dwayne had asked him a couple weeks ago if he still had the number for the locksmith they used at their old warehouse because he needed a key copied. Brandon said he gave him the number but didn't ask what it was for. Now we know. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm in my own apartment that smells like someone else's perfume, sleeping in a bed another woman slept in for over a week, and my boyfriend is God knows where, probably with her right now for all I know. There are still bags of her stuff by my front door that nobody's come to get. My mom keeps calling, asking if everything's okay, because she could hear in my voice something was wrong, and I haven't told her yet because she doesn't need this stress right now. I have questions I haven't asked yet. I have things I noticed in that apartment that I haven't brought up yet. And Dwayne has not come home. Anyway, this is already way too long. I'll update when something happens because I have a feeling this is nowhere near over. Every woman has a moment in her life where she realizes she's been the only one building. Like you're out here buying furniture, setting up a home, making it feel like something, and he just shows up, moves in with his little gaming chair and thinks that's equal effort, and then has the nerve to rearrange your space for someone else. Men like this don't see homes, they see hotels with a girlfriend attached. The "she's like a sister" thing needs to be studied by scientists at this point because it is the most reliable red flag in the history of dating. No man in history has ever said, "she's like a sister to me," and then it turned out to be completely innocent. Not once, not ever. That phrase is basically a confession wrapped in a lie, and we need to start treating it like one. The second those words leave his mouth, you should already be checking the shampoo bottles in your bathroom, babe. And honestly, the thing that would haunt me is not even the woman. It's the fact that he was sweet to you on FaceTime while she was right there. He asked about your mom. He told you what he had for dinner. He said goodnight. And the whole time, he was building a whole second life 10 feet away from your pillow. That's the part that breaks trust in a way you can't fix. Because now every sweet moment you ever had with this man, you gotta wonder who was in the room, who was waiting, who was listening. That kind of doubt doesn't go away with an apology. That moves in permanently. First update. So after I posted last time, Dwayne didn't come home that night. I sat up until like 1 a.m. waiting because we still had a lot to talk about, and I had things I needed to say that I didn't get to before he walked out. Eventually, I gave up and went to bed. Woke up around 6 a.m. because the apartment was making that weird clicking sound the heater does when the temperature drops, and I checked my phone and nothing from him. No text, no missed call, nothing. I wasn't about to chase him. If he wanted to disappear instead of dealing with what he did, that was his choice, but it was also giving me a very clear picture of where his priorities were. He finally showed up the next day around noon. I was at the kitchen table eating leftover soup from the batch I'd made the night before, and I heard his key in the lock. He walked in and stood there for a second looking at the bags of Eve's stuff still sitting by the door. Then he looked at me and said, "We need to talk." I told him, "Yeah, we definitely do, but I'm going first this time." I told him I spent the entire night in this apartment alone, going over everything in my head, and I had questions that he was going to answer honestly, or this conversation would be our last one. He sat down across from me and he looked tired, but I didn't care. I was tired too. I'd been taking care of my mom for 2 weeks and came home to a whole different life happening in my apartment. First thing I asked, and this was the one that had been eating at me since the night before, was whether Eve was the reason his communication dropped off during my second week away. Because looking back, the timeline matched perfectly. She moved in around day 4, and by day 7 or 8, he was barely texting me and dodging my FaceTime calls. He sat there for a minute and then said, "Yeah, kind of." He said having Eve around made things complicated because he didn't want to be on the phone with me while she was sitting right there because it felt awkward. I asked him why it would feel awkward to talk to your own girlfriend in your own apartment unless there was something happening that he didn't want me to hear or see. He said it wasn't like that. He just didn't want Eve to feel like a third wheel. A third wheel. In my apartment. That I pay half the rent on. He was worried about making Eve comfortable while I was 4 hours away taking care of my sick mother and wondering why my boyfriend was suddenly acting distant. I told him to really sit with how that sounds. He just rubbed his face and said he knew it sounded bad. Then I asked about the sleeping situation again, because his answer from yesterday wasn't cutting it. He told me they slept in the same bed and nothing happened, and I wanted to know more about how that even started. He said the first couple nights she slept on the couch and he was in the bed. Then she said her back hurt. I almost laughed. I seriously almost laughed out loud. And he told her she could take the bed and he'd take the couch. Then after a couple nights of that, his back hurt. And apparently instead of doing what any person with a shred of sense would do, which is telling her to deal with the couch or go find somewhere else to sleep, he just started sleeping in the bed too. Like it was the only possible solution. 2 adults in a 2-bedroom apartment, and the only option was to share a bed. I asked him about the second bedroom again, his gaming room, the one with his 3 monitors and his gaming chair and all his gear. I asked why Eve couldn't sleep in there. He said there wasn't space. I told him that's interesting because there's a whole desk in there that he could have moved. A futon we had in storage in the closet downstairs that he knows about because he helped me carry it down there when we moved in, and enough floor space to set up an air mattress if he really wanted to. He went quiet because he knew I was right. The second bedroom was never too cluttered. He just didn't want to disrupt his setup. He would rather have another woman in our bed than move his gaming monitors. Let that sit for a second. His PlayStation and 3 screens were more important to protect than our relationship. I'm glad I know where I rank. Then I brought up the clothes. Because him letting her sleep in the bed was one thing, but my clothes was a whole different level. I asked him specifically how it happened that she ended up wearing my things. He said she didn't bring much with her when she came over and she needed comfortable stuff to sleep in, and he told her she could borrow some of my stuff. I asked him which of my stuff, and he got vague. He said just some basic shorts and a t-shirt or whatever. I told him I found my favorite hoodie on her body, the gray Champion one that I wear literally every single night. I told him I found 2 of my tank tops in the laundry basket mixed in with his clothes. I told him I found my black leggings folded on top of the dryer. This wasn't borrowing a t-shirt for one night. This woman was using my wardrobe like it was hers for 10 days, and he facilitated that. He kept saying he was sorry and that he should have bought her some stuff instead. Not that he should have never let another woman wear his girlfriend's clothes, but that the alternative solution would have been to go shopping for her. I told him that's a real interesting instinct, and he should think about why his first response to Eve needing anything is to make sure she's taken care of at any cost, even if that cost is me. We went back and forth about it for a while, and I could tell he was getting frustrated because I wasn't accepting any of his explanations. He kept cycling back to the same point. She needed help, he helped, end of story. And I kept telling him that helping a friend and replacing your girlfriend in your own home are two completely different things, and he crossed every single line between them. He told me I was being dramatic, and I told him no. Dramatic would have been what I wanted to do when I found her in my bed. What I'm doing right now is giving him a chance to explain himself, and he keeps failing. Then something came out that I wasn't expecting, and this is the part that really changed things for me. I asked him if Eve knew about me before she moved in. Like, did she know I existed? That this was my apartment too? That I was coming back? He said of course she knew. I asked what exactly she knew. He said she knew we were together and that I was away visiting family. I asked if he told her I was coming back in 2 weeks. He kind of hesitated and then said he told her I might be gone longer than planned because my mom was really sick. That stopped me cold, because that was a lie. My mom was improving. I'd told him that. I'd texted him updates every single day about how she was doing better, how Richard and I had things covered, how I'd probably be home by Thursday or Friday of that second week. He knew I was coming back on schedule. He told Eve a different story to make her think she had more time there. I asked him why he would tell Eve I might be gone longer when he knew I was coming home. He started doing the thing he does where he talks in circles, trying to not actually answer the question. Finally, after I pressed him, he said he didn't want Eve to feel rushed. He wanted her to feel comfortable and not like she was on a deadline. You guys, he lied to another woman about my return date to our apartment so that she could continue feeling at home in my space. He prioritized her comfort in my home over my basic right to know what was happening in the place I pay rent for. I asked him if he understood how crazy that was, and he said he could see how it looked bad, but that his intentions were good. Good intentions. Every man who ever did something trash hides behind good intentions. I'm so tired of good intentions being used as an excuse for disrespectful behavior. At that point, I needed to get out of the apartment because I could feel myself getting to a place where I was going to say something I couldn't take back. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because I needed to think. I grabbed my keys and drove to Loretta and Brandon's place. They live about 15 minutes away in this split-level house with the green shutters and the motion sensor light that goes off every time a cat walks across the driveway. I love going there because Loretta always has food, and their house smells like those vanilla plug-in things. Loretta opened the door and immediately knew from my face what kind of visit this was. She sat me down at the kitchen table, and Brandon came in from the garage where he'd been messing with something on his truck and sat down too. I told them everything: the bed, the clothes, the keys, the lying about my return date, all of it. Loretta was furious. She kept saying she knew something was off with Eve from the beginning. She said she'd met Eve once at some barbecue Dwayne's friend had thrown over the summer, and Eve had been all over Dwayne the entire time, touching his arm, laughing at everything he said. And when Loretta introduced herself as family connected to me, Eve barely acknowledged her. Loretta said she'd mentioned it to me at the time, and honestly, she did. I remember now. She'd made some offhand comment about Dwayne's little shadow, but I brushed it off because I didn't want to be the jealous girlfriend. Brandon said something that stuck with me, though. He said he'd known Dwayne for years, and Dwayne was the type of guy who would never be the one to make a move or do something overtly wrong, but he would set up situations where things could happen and then act surprised when they did. He said Dwayne does this thing where he creates the conditions for problems and then plays innocent when someone points out the obvious. Brandon said it not in a mean way, but in a this is just how he is kind of way, and it hit different hearing it from someone who actually knows him, because that's exactly what happened. Dwayne didn't technically cheat, at least not that I can prove right now, but he created every condition for it. He moved her in, he put her in our bed, he gave her my clothes, he gave her keys, he lied about when I'd be back. Every single one of those choices was a choice to bring another woman closer while pushing me further away. When I got back to the apartment, Dwayne was still there. He'd been texting me while I was at Loretta's, asking where I went and when I'd be back, and I hadn't responded. I walked in, and he started up again with the, "We need to figure this out" talk. I told him I agree, but first I need to know where he went last night, because he walked out and didn't come back until noon, and I deserved to know where he slept. He told me he went to his boy Carter's place and crashed there. I asked him if he was sure about that. He said yes. I told him okay, and I left it alone for the moment, but I didn't believe him, and here's why. When he came home that afternoon, his jacket smelled like that perfume that had been lingering in the apartment, the same scent that was on the sheets I threw away. The same scent that was in the bathroom, Eve's perfume. I didn't say anything about it yet because I wanted to see what else he'd say before I showed my hand. Instead, I brought up something else. The bags by the door, Eve's stuff that she'd left behind. I told him those bags had been sitting there since yesterday, and nobody had come to get them, and I wanted them gone by tomorrow. He said he'd let her know. I asked how he was going to let her know. Was he going to call her, text her, what? He said he'd text her. I asked if she was the one he'd been texting while I was at Loretta's too, because I noticed when I walked in he locked his phone real quick before putting it down. He said no, that was someone else. I said who? He said his mom. His mom. Dwayne's mother Melanie, who I've met multiple times, who is a perfectly nice woman, but who Dwayne talks to, maybe once a week, and usually just to say hi. Suddenly he's having a deep text conversation with his mom at 9 p.m. on a Friday. I told him that's convenient and he told me to stop looking for problems. I told him the only problem I'm looking at is standing right in front of me. We went in circles after that. He kept wanting me to tell him everything was going to be okay between us. And I kept telling him I can't do that because he hasn't given me a single reason to trust him right now. He asked me what I needed from him. I told him I needed complete honesty about everything that happened during those 2 weeks because I have a feeling I've only scratched the surface. And until I know the full truth, I can't decide anything about this relationship. He told me I knew everything. I told him I don't believe that. Then I asked him something that had been on my mind since I talked to Loretta. I asked about that barbecue over the summer, the one where Eve was all over him. I asked if things like that happened a lot when I wasn't around. He said Eve was just an affectionate person and that's how she is with all her friends. I said, okay, then name one other friend she's that physical with. He couldn't answer. I asked if she'd ever said anything about us, about me specifically, about our relationship. He got this look on his face like he was choosing his next words real carefully and said she'd mentioned once that she thought he was settling. Settling. Eve told my boyfriend that he was settling by being with me and he never told me. He never shut it down, never corrected her, never said a line. He just absorbed it. I asked when she said that and he said a few months ago, back in the summer. So for months, this woman had been sitting in his ear telling him he was settling for me and he kept right on prioritizing her over me, kept answering her texts mid-dinner, kept running to help her every time she called, kept defending her to me every time I brought up concerns.
I asked him what he said when she told him that. He said he told her it wasn't like that and changed the subject. Changed the subject. He didn't tell her to respect his relationship. He didn't tell her to never say that again. He didn't tell me so I could know what I was really dealing with. He just changed the subject and kept right on being her hero. I told him that alone tells me everything I need to know about where his loyalty has been this entire time. He started getting emotional and saying he loves me and he doesn't want to lose me and Eve is just a friend who overstepped and he should have handled things differently. I told him Eve didn't overstep by herself. He rolled out the red carpet for her. He opened every door, literally and figuratively, and he doesn't get to act like she's the villain in a situation he constructed. That conversation ended with both of us in separate rooms. Him in the gaming room, me in the bedroom. I was laying there staring at the ceiling and my phone went off. It was Loretta. She'd been talking to Brandon some more, and apparently Brandon had texted Carter, the friend Dwayne claimed he stayed with last night. Just casually, not even about the situation, and Carter mentioned he hadn't seen Dwayne in a couple weeks, so Dwayne didn't stay at Carter's place. He lied about where he went the night he walked out, and the only thing I could smell on him when he came back was Eve's perfume. I haven't confronted him about that yet. I'm sitting on it. Because every time I think I know the extent of what happened during those 2 weeks, something else falls out and I need to be smart about how I handle this. He's already shown me he'll lie to my face without flinching. I need to figure out exactly how deep this goes before I make my next move. My mom called this morning and I almost lost it on the phone because she asked how Dwayne was doing and I had to say fine and change the subject. She's still recovering and the last thing she needs is to worry about my relationship falling apart. Richard could tell something was up though because he texted me separately saying, "You okay?" And I just said, "Yeah, just tired." He sent back a period. Just a dot. That's Richard's way of saying I don't believe you, but I'll wait until you're ready. Meanwhile, Eve's bags are still by the front door. Nobody's come to get them. And I realized this morning when I was putting laundry away that there's still one of her shirts hanging in the back of the closet that I missed during my initial sweep. It's this floral button-down thing in a size that is definitely not mine. I pulled it out and held it up, and I swear it still smelled like that same perfume. I hung it back up. I'm leaving it there for now. There are things I haven't told you guys yet that I noticed in the apartment, details I'm still piecing together, and I have a feeling the conversation about where Dwayne actually went that night is going to blow this whole thing wide open. I'll update again when I've had that confrontation because I am not letting this slide. Thanks for sticking with me. This is my real life, and typing it out is the only thing keeping me from completely losing it right now. I love how every single answer this man gives somehow makes it worse.
Like most people when they're explaining themselves are trying to dig out of a hole, but Dwayne brought a bigger shovel every single time he opened his mouth. She asked why Eve was in the bed and he said the couch was uncomfortable. She asked why not the second bedroom and he said it was too cluttered. She asked why her clothes and he said Eve didn't bring enough stuff. Every answer is just another way of saying I thought about it and I chose her comfort over your entire existence. And I really didn't think that was going to be a problem. The man has the critical thinking skills of a napkin. And can we talk about how she's just a friend is doing the heaviest lifting of any sentence in the English language right now? That phrase has carried more lies than a moving truck. Men have been hiding behind she's just a friend since the beginning of time, and it has never once turned out to be the full truth, but they keep using it because it puts you in the position of being the jealous, insecure girlfriend if you push back. It's genius in the worst way possible because the second you question it, you become the problem instead of him. And that's exactly how these situations survive as long as they do. Not because we're stupid, but because we don't want to be that girl. So we let things slide until the slide becomes an avalanche. Last update, I know some of you have been waiting, and I'm sorry it took me a few days, but I needed to actually live through the rest of this before I could write it down. And honestly, I needed the dust to settle enough that I could type without shaking from anger. So after my last post, I sat on the Carter lie for about 2 days. Didn't bring it up. I acted normal-ish around the apartment, which wasn't even hard because Dwayne and I were barely speaking anyway. We moved around each other like roommates. But I was watching. Every time his phone buzzed, he'd angle the screen away. Every time he left the room to respond to something, I clocked it. He was still talking to Eve constantly, and he wasn't even trying that hard to hide it anymore. Sunday night, we were both in the kitchen. He was heating up food, and I was wiping down the counter, and I just said it. No let-in, no warning. I told him I know you weren't at Carter's that night. So where were you? He froze with the microwave still going behind him. Started asking what I meant and why I was still on about that night. I told him because he lied, and I don't move past lies. I move through them, so he could tell me the truth right now, or I would start packing his stuff tonight. Then he admitted it. He went to Eve's. She'd been crashing in some spare room at a place belonging to a woman she used to work with. And the night he walked out on me, the night he said he needed air after our first fight about all this, he drove straight to Eve. He said he went there because he was stressed and needed someone who wasn't going to yell at him. I asked him if he heard what just came out of his mouth. You left to fight with your girlfriend about another woman, and your immediate move was to go BE with the other woman. He said it wasn't how I was making it sound. I told him there's only one way this sounds and he knows it. I asked where he slept. He said they were on the couch talking and both fell asleep there. I told him I don't believe a single word anymore, and honestly at this point, the specifics don't even matter because what he'd done was already enough without whatever happened on that couch. He chose her at every single turn. Every decision during those 2 weeks and after was about protecting Eve, prioritizing Eve, making Eve comfortable. I was the one who paid rent, who furnished the apartment, who was 4 hours away caring for my sick mom, trusting him. And he handed our home to another woman and then lied over and over and kept going to her even after getting caught. He started up with the "I'm sorry and I'll cut her off completely if that's what you need." I told him I'm not going to be the woman who has to beg her boyfriend to stop seeing someone else. That's not a relationship. That's a hostage situation. If he has to be told to choose me, the choice was already made a long time ago. I told him I wanted him out of the apartment, not eventually, now. He got upset and said I was throwing away everything we built together. I told him, what exactly did you build? I bought the couch. I bought the bed. I set up this entire home. You brought a TV and garbage bags of clothes. What did you build here? He packed a bag that night and left. I didn't ask where he was going because I already knew. Okay, but here is the part that broke the whole thing open and the reason I waited to update. 2 days after Dwayne left, I was taking the trash out to the dumpster area behind our building. Mrs. Wappins from Unit 4B was out there letting her little terrier do his business on the grass strip by the parking lot. I've mentioned her before. She's this retired lady who's always sitting by her window or out with that dog, and she sees everything that happens in this complex. I always wave and say hi, but we've never had like a real conversation beyond that. She asked me if everything was okay because she noticed my boyfriend's car hadn't been in the lot. I just said, yeah, we're figuring some things out, and she nodded, and then just casually, like she was talking about the weather, she said, well, at least that other girl stopped coming around too. I said, what do you mean? She said the girl who used to come over during the day. She said she'd seen her coming up the stairs a few times a week for at least a month before I left for my trip. Always during the day, always when I wasn't home, always stayed a few hours and then left before the afternoon. A month. At least a month before I even went to my mom's. Eve wasn't just there during the 2 weeks I was gone. She had been coming to our apartment regularly while I was at work during my early shifts, spending hours there with Dwayne during his late start days, and leaving before I got home. For weeks. Maybe longer, because she said at least a month, but she also said she doesn't always sit by the window, so it could have been going on even longer than that. Everything he told me was a lie. Not just some of it. All of it. The whole story about Eve's roommate kicking her out and her having nowhere to go. That might have been true, but it wasn't the reason she moved in. She moved in because she was already basically there. My 2-week trip didn't create the situation. It just gave him the excuse to stop sneaking around and do it openly. The crisis wasn't Eve losing her apartment. The crisis was that I came home early enough to catch what had been happening for God knows how long. And it explained everything. Why Eve knew where the towels were. Why she seemed so comfortable in the kitchen. Why she looked at me like I was the visitor when I found her in my bed. Because in her mind, she'd been coming to that apartment for weeks. She knew the layout, she knew where things were, she probably sat on my couch and ate off my plates dozens of times before she ever slept in my bed. I was the one who didn't know what was happening in my own home. I didn't confront Dwayne about this. There was nothing left to confront. Every conversation had just been another layer of lies, and I was done peeling. I called Loretta and told her, and she went silent for a good 10 seconds, which for Loretta is like screaming. She told me she was coming over, and she did, and we went through the apartment one final time. Found a hair tie in the couch cushions and a phone case under the bathroom sink that wasn't mine. Loretta held up the case and just looked at me, and I threw it all in the bags with the rest of Eve's stuff and put them outside the front door. I told my mom a few days later. Kept it simple. Richard called me that night, and I told him the full version because Richard can handle it, and also because he never liked Dwayne. He said he was driving down the following weekend to help me change the locks. I told him the leasing office handles that, but he said he was coming anyway. That's Richard. Brandon told me about a week later that Dwayne moved in with Eve full-time. Didn't get his own place, didn't go to his mom Melanie's, didn't crash at Carter's for real this time, went straight to Eve and stayed. I told Brandon I appreciate it, but I'm done hearing about where Dwayne lives because it has nothing to do with me anymore. And I meant that, because I finally have the full picture now. Dwayne didn't help a friend in crisis. He'd been bringing Eve into our home behind my back for weeks, probably months. My trip to my mom's was just the moment he stopped hiding it. And the only thing he's sorry about is that I came back before he could cover it up. He told me that himself. His plan was to clean up and have her out before I returned. He wasn't going to stop. He was going to let me sleep in those sheets and hang my hoodie back on the hook and never know another woman had been wearing it. That's not a mistake. That's a man who built an entire second life inside our shared one and only called it friendship because he knew I'd leave if he called it what it was. I'm still in the apartment. My name is on the lease and I earned every inch of this place. New sheets on the bed, not green ones, my comforter back where it belongs. Dwayne texts asking to come get his stuff. I told him coordinate through Brandon because I don't want to see him and I won't be here when he comes. He asked if we could talk one more time and I told him we've talked enough. And every single conversation just uncovered another lie, so no, there is nothing left to say. Anyway, that's it. That's the whole story. Thanks to everyone who followed this. I appreciate all of you more than you know. I'm good. I really am. I think every woman needs to hear this. When a man moves on the same day, he leaves your apartment with zero hesitation, zero grieving, zero pause. That does not mean he never loved you, and it does not mean you weren't enough. It means he already left a long time ago, and you just didn't get the memo. The relationship was over for him months before it was over for you. He just kept showing up because your apartment was nicer and your fridge was fuller. Some men don't stay because they want to be with you. They stay because leaving is inconvenient until they have somewhere better lined up. And the moment that somewhere better is ready, they are out the door without looking back, and somehow you're the one left wondering what went wrong. Nothing went wrong with you, babe. You were just the placeholder, and you deserve to be the priority. The scariest part of this whole thing is how long it could have gone on if she hadn't come home when she did. Like, really think about that. If her mom had been sick for another month, if she'd stayed one more week, if traffic had been worse that Thursday, he would have cleaned it all up, and she would have walked into a perfectly normal-looking apartment and never known. And that is what should terrify every woman, because it means the only difference between my boyfriend is loyal and my boyfriend is running a whole second situation is sometimes just timing. You didn't catch him because he got sloppy. You caught him because you drove a little faster than he expected. And how many women out there right now think everything is fine simply because they haven't come home at the wrong time yet? That thought alone will keep me up tonight. Oh, anyway, that's the story. Love you guys. See you in the next one.